Earlier this March, for spring break, I decided to go down to Chattanooga to visit the Tennessee Aquarium. In the past, this has been called, or at least I have called it, the Chattanooga Aquarium. I don't know if I've just been misspelling it or mispronouncing it or calling it the wrong thing the entire time, or if it in fact has always been called the Tennessee Aquarium. In today's video, I want to just give a little overview of how that trip went and share some pictures with you. So this is going to be a little bit of um, a photography video, and we're not going to be really going into the actual specifics of what ISOs and all these numbers. We're just going to look at the pictures, and I just wanted to bring you guys along with me and kind of review the trip we had. It was a great trip. It was just a day trip. Left in the morning, early in the morning. We ended up getting there actually a little bit later than I wanted to, but we got there around, 10:30, 11 o'clock. We parked, and then after that, we ended up going to go and get our tickets. At first I was thinking maybe we could go get some IMAX tickets as well, but we just ended up getting standard tickets, and that was a good thing because we ended up spending pretty much all the time that we could have spent in both aquariums. It's one aquarium system, but it's two buildings. And just so you guys know, during this whole thing, you will have pictures put over my face whenever I reference a picture, or over here to one of the sides. So when you first enter in, you go up this really long and dark escalator. And it's pretty long and dark, and you're just going up this escalator. It's a good 30-second trip up this escalator. So I took a picture going up because it was a little spooky. I've always remembered it being there, but I never remembered it being that dark. You get to the top, and it's not the top of the building, I don't think. Maybe it is. I don't think it's the top of the building. It's just a higher level, and you kind of get this nice little overview over what I believe, I can't remember if it's the Tennessee River, but there's a river there. There's a nice bridge, and you can also get a good picture. I got a few good pictures of myself there that I could use, for whatever. But I just thought there were some really cool pictures. After that, you end up going to this area where they have turtles, and you start to get into the fish. There's some alligators too. There was like a waterfall. Actually, right before that, there was an area where some otters were supposed to be, but they weren't out, unfortunately. But the first area where there were actually a substantial amount of fish was the alligator area with the turtles. We actually ended up meeting this really nice lady there that was with her grandson, and this grandson was really well behaved. He was, he wasn't rowdy, he wasn't jumping around, but I could still tell he was like fascinated and having fun. So it wasn't like he wasn't having fun. He was just very well behaved. And I even told her, like, your grandson's really well behaved. And she's like, I know, he's so great. But she was actually an amateur photographer, and she didn't have her camera with her. But she was just spending time with her grandson. But she was kind of asking questions and everything. And it was a nice little talk. But yeah, I was able to snatch some pretty cool little pictures of the alligator and fish, and there's some bass in that area. That was honestly one of my favorite areas. Just the vibes were just immaculate. There was a group of like really young kids that were in some sort of spring break camp. That's what I guess it was. But it's a group of really young kids, like from like a school or something. And they were all there, and they were being a little rowdy, and it's just something you have to deal with. But it was just kind of fun to see them, because like when you look at kids that young walking around and having fun, it brings you back to the time when you were a kid. And it also like inspires you a little bit, because they're all full of life, they're full of happiness, they're full of joy and glee. And I'm not saying when you get older you're just always depressed and sad, but the reality of life sometimes ends up setting in a little bit too much when you get older, and you forget the kind of that childish happiness and naiveness and innocence that we all used to have. And I thought, as much as it was annoying, I thought it was all, I smiled a little bit. I was like, you know what, they're having fun, like let them have fun, let them do their thing. Also, forgive me if I get these pictures out of order. I didn't take pictures of everything, but one of my favorite pictures I actually ended up taking was of some sort of a snake, and it was curled up. I think it was like I don't know if it was a ball python or something, but it was curled up on a ball on like a tree branch, and I just got some really good pictures of it. Personally, the way I take pictures, I usually like to take pictures a little bit darker. That's just how I like to do it. I don't know why. It looks more rich to me, and it looks higher quality to me versus having it at a normal exposure. Another thing we were able to see was there were several tanks that had sturgeons in them. And, as someone who's gone fishing in the past and likes to fish, I know sturgeon can get massive. Usually in captivity, from what I understand, they don't get that big. I mean, they still get several feet long, like, 5 or 6 feet long. But out in the wild, apparently, they can get even bigger than that, which I find crazy. And fun fact, actually, the Tennessee Aquarium is one of the, biggest people in the area that actually helps repopulate the sturgeon community, or sturgeon population, I should say, not community, but sturgeon population in the area at least. And the way sturgeons work is they take a long time until they reach maturity to where they can reproduce. So I think they said it's been 20 something years now. So they're hoping that just about now, within the next couple years, they'll start to see the sturgeon population really grow and bloom. Um, because that's when they should start to be able to reproduce on their own. There was another area that was really fascinating, and it's not something I haven't done in the past before, but it was just something I really liked. I remember there were two petting tanks. There were two petting, little petting tanks. One of them had sturgeons in them, and then the other one had these rays. I don't know what kind of rays they are. I don't want to say stingrays, but they look like stingrays. I know there's different types of rays, and I mean, I've done it in the past, but it was just really cool to be able to do it again. The whole two fingers, put them in there, and kind of gently pet them. Is sturgeons are bony. The rays were kind of soft and sleek and a little bit slimy. There's another part where we had the penguins. I ended up getting some really good pictures of the penguins, and there was a few that I really liked. There was one penguin I remember vividly that kept coming up across. At the time, we just so happened to be there at a time, which I don't know, maybe this happens all the time, but we so happened to be there at a time where there were two people in there feeding the penguins. So I got to see and take some pictures of the penguins getting fed. And, they would get fed, they would zoom around the water, jump out. It was really cool. And I got some cool video too. There was another really fascinating area with jellyfish. I know it's nothing crazy or super special, but I just love how dark and rich the background for the jellyfish gets. I know my settings probably weren't the best, and I didn't end up getting the best pictures, but I still really thoroughly enjoyed it. Now, there was one thing that I saw, which was, it was an octopus, and honestly, I don't know if it was just me. Again, I'm not a specialist, I'm not a scientist or anything, but this octopus looked like it was like freaking out or something, because it was in what looked like a smaller tank, and maybe they like smaller tanks, or maybe, I don't know what, but this octopus looked like it was like trying to it was just moving around a bunch, and it looked like it couldn't move that much. It didn't have a bunch of space to move, and I didn't know what was up with that, but I got a couple pictures of it. I honestly didn't get that good of a picture. I got a really good picture, though, of a cuttlefish. And I absolutely love this cuttlefish because I got a cool video of it, too. And it was so cute. And it looked like it was posing for the camera, like, the entire time. And it was honestly one of my favorite pictures we ended up taking. There's another one where we got, like, a chameleon. And I thought that was another really good picture. I think the chameleon and the snake at the beginning, or the ball python, or whatever it was, were two really good pictures I got that I was really happy with and content with. There were, so many different pictures that we could have taken. There were so many opportunities for pictures. There were pictures that we could have taken from, where, like, there's a cave area at the end where you could look up and there was glass above you, and, you could have fish swimming over. There were lights in the actual fish tanks that would cast a light over everything, and when fish would swim in front of it, it looked like you were like down at the bottom of the ocean looking up. Throughout this whole experience, I'll just go over a few of the highlights. I remember early on at one point, I was kind of geeking out over some of the freshwater tanks, and there's this massive freshwater tank where they have these insanely huge catfish, and these catfish were like just massive, bigger than I've ever seen in real life. And I was just like, oh my gosh, they had like these massive stingrays on the bottom. They had sharks. Well, that's in another tank, but they had sharks, and they had a bunch of like sturgeons in there. I mean, I was freaking out over this. It was just so much for me to be able to process. I could have sat there all day and just looked at it. As a matter of fact, in one of the freshwater tanks, there was actually a really cool thing that happened. There were some divers, so they were in the tank, like cleaning the tanks. And I haven't told any of you guys this, but over the past several months, really past few years, but several months, I've been big into like looking up like diver content, and I've been big into consuming diver content because it's kind of interested me. It scared me, but it's also interested me. And I saw these divers, and they're just in there, cleaning the side of the tanks, kind of playing with the fish. There's a couple time periods where, like, the younger kids, there's like a middle school aged kids that are a little bit older than the other kids that were, I was talking about. They would come up to the tank, they would take selfies, they would wave to the divers, and the divers would wave back. I just thought that was really cool and kind of fun to see. And I ended up taking some videos of the divers. And I also ended up getting a few selfies with the divers. I didn't they didn't pose, but I just kind of snuck a couple selfies because I didn't want to bother them. They're doing their thing, they're doing their dive. I don't want to bother them. But I just thought it was a really cool kind of experience to see. I'm sure it happens all the time. There was also a butterfly garden that I liked looking at. They have this little area where you could look at the different stages of the butterflies, and this wasn't just a model. These were the actual butterflies developing. They had like a few different trays with them in different developmental stages, which I thought was really cool. I even got to see some of the butterflies sitting there trying to expand their wings out. I would say one of the most grand tanks that is in the entire aquarium system there is the saltwater tank that has the massive turtle in it. And this is like some massive sea turtle. Like, this turtle is bigger than me by like a few feet. It has sharks. It has, rays. It has like what looks like manta rays. I know if you want to get really scientific about it, technically I think manta rays don't exist anymore, but there's like different subspecies. You get the idea. An assortment of different fish. And I was lucky enough to get some really cool pictures of me right next to the manta ray, or right next to the fish. Actually, there might be one with me like next to a ray or something, but those were absolutely beautiful. There's also a part where it showed the coral. It was like a coral part of the tank, and it had like this really beautiful coral reef with all these different colors. I mean, like, we ended up seeing fish, that you'd see in Finding Nemo. You'd see like the clownfish, all the other fish. You saw sea anemones. You saw all these other things. Finally, at the end, we ended up getting out of there, and it was like a lot later than we thought it was going to be. We ended up walking down the street. We ended up getting some. It was a ramen shop, but they had like poke bowls, which those I love those. Those are great. Admittedly, the ones we have closer to my house are actually better in my opinion, but the ones they had there weren't bad. We had some boba, which was pretty good. And then we ended up going back outside. We were gonna kind of walk around and take some pictures. So we started doing that. We walked, took some pictures, started walking down the street, and then started taking pictures of some horse. And then some homeless guy walks up to me. I'll just name him Roy. I don't know what his actual name was, and I don't have any pictures of him. This homeless guy walks up to me, and he's like, "Can you give, I need like 80 cents for some fries or something. I'm short 80 cents." I said, "I don't carry cash." And, me being me, I really don't carry cash. But I said, if you need, I can buy you food, because that's usually what I do. If they need food, I can buy them food. And sometimes they actually do need food, and they'll take you up on that offer, but sometimes they don't need food. They're just trying to get, whatever else they want. So I'll be like, "No, I'm good." So he said, "Yeah, let's go." I said, "All right, well, what do you want to do?" Which was probably my first mistake. I should have said, "Oh, let's go here." But I was like, "Where do you want to go?" He's like, "Oh, I want to go to Five Guys. I just need fries." He said, "All right." And Five Guys was all the way down the street, so I had to turn around, awkwardly walk down the street for like 3 or 4 minutes, go into Five Guys, and we had to sit in line too. I thought we were gonna walk in. We had to sit in line for like 10 minutes. I mean, it was not fun. And the entire time, this guy is like, he had to have been a combination of drunk, a little bit high, or there was just something wrong with him. I don't know. But he was acting really, really weird, really kind of loosey-goosey, and there's some other stuff he was doing. But anyway, it wasn't anything absolutely horrible. It was just a little bit uncomfortable for me, and at that point, I really kind of wanted to get out of that situation as soon as I could. So we got up to the counter. By the time I got to the counter, he didn't just want fries. He wanted fries, a burger, and a drink. And you know how much that costs at Five Guys. I mean, it ended up being like almost $20. Like, it was expensive. Anyway, I got up to the counter. I ended up paying for the thing. And the guy at the counter, I was like, I was fixing to dip. I was like, all right, here, like I'll pay for it. Here's your receipt, and I'm a dip. You know, you have to go wait for your food. Guy at the counter was like, man, like he was talking to to Roy. He was like, man, listen, I can make the food, but you're gonna have to wait outside. I already told you. We already asked you to leave before. And in my mind, I'm like, oh dear, you know, he did something. He assaulted someone, or he said something, or he was acting, you know, whatever. I mean, he got kicked out beforehand, and then he came back, and he didn't tell me. Of course, he's not going to tell me, but he got kicked out beforehand, and then he came back. So obviously something happened. Like the guy told me, like the guy was saying that the manager asked him to leave. So like obviously he did something. Anyway, I ended up just carrying the receipt, and I did. Like the cashier was kind of wanting me to stay, but I'm like, listen, I'm not going to stay here for another 20 minutes and wait because it was kind of busy in there. I'm not going to wait another 20. I dipped. We dipped. I ended up starting to walk back towards the car, and this is where kind of an interesting thing happened. I was walking down towards the car, and there's this couple. You know, there's a guy, and then his wife, and then they had, you know, two little like service dogs. I don't know if they were service dogs. I'm not going to judge. They had two service dogs, and the guy was walking down the street, smoking a joint, like not even hiding it. Like he wasn't even trying to be like low key. He was just straight up puffing and walking, and it that thing was so loud. I mean, it reeked, and you could smell it all the way down the block. I ended up snagging a little picture, um, and you can even see the smoke. But I just thought that was a little weird because you can't. I mean, that's still illegal here in Tennessee, and you can't just walk down the street like that. At least not legally. And I did see a few cops there, so it's not like there weren't cops out. But we were walking down the street, and there's this guy just standing right next to us. And at this point, this you know he was a good 30 steps ahead of me, and you could smell the trail behind him. And I look over this guy that was just standing here, and he looked over at me, and I'm just like, and he's just like, it was just kind of funny because we were both just like, what in the world? Like, really? So anyway, we made it down, actually. We ended up going all the way down to the waterfront. We took some pictures. We saw some people fishing there. It was starting to get a little bit darker at this point, so we ended up heading back and ended up driving all the way back home, which was a good about hour and a half, 2 hour drive. And other than that, it was a great little trip. It was a solid day trip. Had fun. Got to take some pictures. But I appreciate each and every one of you guys for sticking around and watching this whole video. I know this was a little bit more of a boring video, but I hope this at least told a little bit of a fun story. If you guys want to, I mean, I encourage you guys, go to your local aquarium. I don't know how many like big aquariums are around in your area. I know in Nashville or in Tennessee at least, and then I don't know if it was Georgia or Alabama. One of those two has a massive aquarium. Like those are great places for aquariums, but oftentimes, I mean, they're great places for conservations and stuff. And if you can, support them. But for now, I'm gonna leave it at that. Let me know what you guys think down in the comments below. Make sure to like and subscribe, and I will see you guys next time.